Hey there, Jordan Sheridan. It is Tuesday, April 24th. Busy day in the news. I was actually away for a couple days, so I'm just catching up on a couple stories. I'm going to wait just a few moments till we get a couple more viewers to start my spiel. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. Just a few moments. If you don't notice, I don't have the best lighting today. But what can you do? What can you do? I don't have a professional helping me, so I'm kind of myself and my business partner, mostly my business partner, today. We're trying to kind of move some things around in my apartment for some better lighting, and unfortunately, weren't so successful. My apartment is not, how shall I say it, is not the best for lighting. There's a lot of fluorescent lights above, and outlets don't work, and there's a whole lot of stuff. Hey, my favorite troll, already in the comments, Jerry Ross. You know, Jerry, for someone who doesn't like me and doesn't like my work, you're sure are very loyal to me. I think you watch more than my mother does, so I appreciate it, Jerry. My favorite troll probably works for the Dakota Access Pipeline, but I still have not confirmed that yet. So, Jerry, thank you. Brandy says, your lighting is fine. Why, thank you. My business partner, Jen, worked very hard to set it up. And I made the sign, which is already falling apart a little bit, but I kind of like to keep it raw and authentic. So it kind of looks like I made that sign in arts and crafts, and then I took it outside while it was raining, and now it's all crumpled and gross. But this is the ground floor of the media revolution, baby. So we're going to kind of keep it real, and I do have some people in mind that I could hire full time down the road to be camera person, lighting, all those things. But for now, it's just me. With Riley says the sign is very grassroots. I agree. I agree. Royal DTV looks like shit. Glad you think so. Thanks, Royal. We'll work on it, try to improve it for tomorrow. But for today, you get my ugly face. I need to shave and some poor lighting. So, a lot going on in the news. I was away over the weekend, so I missed the fact that apparently now corporate media and CNN is all of a sudden, smearing progressive media folks, anti-war folks as conspiracy theorists. So I'm definitely going to get into CNN smearing the legendary Jimmy Dore. Just so you know, before I went live, I actually reached out to Jimmy because, real reporters reach out to people for comment. Do you want to comment? I'm going to go live and report on what CNN wrote about you. I haven't heard back from him yet because he's a busy guy, but apparently CNN didn't even reach out to Jimmy before calling him a far left conspiracy kook. So that's one story. Then you have the DNC is now, the DNC strategy for winning elections in 2018 and apparently 2012. Let's sue the Russian government. Let's sue the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks. Yeah, for whatever, conspiracy or collusion. And because as Tom Perez said on Meet the Press, we're punching back. I'm punching back for democracy. Well, I'm going to figuratively punch back at Tom Perez. Not physically. Don't want to get in any fights here. But we're going to talk about Mr. Perez and his stupid-ass lawsuit. Also, there is a New York Times reporter out with a book on Hillary Clinton and covering her. She was on MSNBC last night. That interview was ridiculous. In more serious news, there was Saudi Arabia bombed a wedding in Yemen, killing over 20 people. Guess who's arming Saudi Arabia for that genocide in Yemen? Us. Do you see CNN, the New York Times, all these people up in arms that Saudi Arabia just killed 20 innocent people through us? I don't see that. They were up in arms over reports that Assad gassed his people without evidence. They were cheerleading for President Trump to drop bombs on Syria. But when the United States is arming Saudi Arabia, no. And Saudi Arabia drops bombs on a wedding in Yemen, killing 20, mostly innocent civilians, crickets. But I want to lead, actually. I want to lead with a story that is getting zero coverage, as far as I can see. It's a story that is not sexy. It's a story that is not Trump related, really, is not Russia related, but it's kind of like life or death related. And call me old fashioned, I seem to think those are important stories. And by the way, press the share button. Let's get this out to as many people as humanly possible. Very funky things go on with YouTube, where some weeks you're getting 100 to 150 live viewers, and then the next week you're barely getting 50 to 60. Some weeks your viewers are getting notified when you're live. Other weeks they're not. I mean, very strange things. I digress. I'm not going to get into YouTube and their shenanigans, but press the share button. Let's get it out to as many people as possible. And of course, before I get into the first story, I just want to bring you up to date where we are. We are currently at 343 reporting channel Patreons. That's patrons. 343 patrons, almost at 2,000 a month. Jen, when did we launch this? 2 months ago?
Yeah, about a month and a half.
And by the way, my business partner, Jen, in the house in New York City, so I'm going to bring her on a little bit later so you can see her in the flesh. She doesn't like being on camera, so we're going to work on that. Is that right, Jen?
It is not right.
She says that's fake news. Anyway, 343 patrons. Maybe we can get it to 350 by the end of the live stream. Maybe we can get it to 360. To be clear, this Patreon is so we could launch this company, Status Coup, which we're currently working to launch. We had business meetings yesterday with the attorney that is incorporating our business, and a lot of logistics, a lot of planning goes into launching a company. But this Patreon we're looking for funding so we could launch this media network. So between my book Patreon, by the way, this is my reporting Patreon, which you see on the screen. My book Patreon is different, and Chapter 7 of my book Corporate Con Job out yesterday. And that's on Standing Rock, The Rise of Fascism in America. So I have a lot of people who are Patreons at both the book Patreon and the reporting Patreon. Jen will put both links in the chat. So let's get down to business, shall we? You know, it's amazing to me that a lot of these philanthropists like Warren Buffett, like Bill Gates, they get just adored in the corporate media because they give a lot of their money to charity, and there's documentaries done on them, and really slobbering coverage of how great they are. Warren Buffett, he goes with his grandkids to McDonald's and gave away all his fortune and lives very modestly. And Bill Gates has done all this terrific work around the world through charity, and all that is true, not taken away from them. But there's not as many reports on some of the bad things those people are doing. So I want to bring you up to date. As you know, when I was at the Young Turks, hold on, how come you don't have a super chat set up? Because I'm not monetized. Start throwing bows and arrows, figuratively, at YouTube. To do a super chat, you have to have your channel monetized. YouTube has not monetized my channel yet, even though we're over 12,000 subscribers in just 2 months, which is damn good. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Yeah, they haven't monetized my channel. You could only do super chats if you are monetized, which I am not yet. So I will be doing super chats. So, bottom line, you have, now we're buffering again. Okay, so bottom line, as I was at the Young Turks, I covered the East Chicago lead crisis quite a lot. And the East Chicago lead crisis was when they found ground soil to have 212 times the, quote, allowable limit for lead. 212 times the allowable limit for lead. They found it in a government housing complex, 99% black residents in that complex, obviously poor, living on government housing, all those things. Because basically they had built this government complex with poor black people in it on top of a lead smelting plant. And outside of this one complex, which they found 212 times the allowable limit for lead, they also have found lead and arsenic throughout East Chicago, the city. East Chicago, a predominantly Latino and black community. It's about 40 minutes east of Chicago, Illinois. So you got Chicago, Illinois, and East Chicago, Indiana. So the East Chicago lead crisis is still very much a lead crisis, but it gets no coverage. Well, now, as I'm about to read for you, the government housing complex that had all these poor black people living in it. They're demolishing that complex. They've already evicted all the residents, and they're demolishing that complex. And guess where they're taking the demolished homes and the demolished structures to? Guess where? Bill Gates, the landfill company, the waste management company Bill Gates owns, they're taking the lead contaminated housing units and they're putting it in Bill Gates's Republic Services waste management company. Let me read you from this article real quick. Update. State and county officials call for a halt to the dumping of contaminated East Chicago building material near Lowell, Indiana. Lowell, Indiana is about a half hour from East Chicago. So let me read you some of this. State Senator, as I get rid of the Nexium ad, State Senator Rick Niemier and Lake County Councilman Eldon Strong called for a halt to the dumping of lead-contaminated building material from an East Chicago Superfund site. What they mean by the East Chicago Superfund site is that West Calumet complex where 212 times the, quote, allowable limit of lead was found, where kids had been playing in this soil for years. You had mothers with all types of rare cancers and autoimmune issues. One woman I interviewed in this housing unit had to get a hysterectomy at age 29. Just a lot of people that were ill that for a long time just thought it was bad luck. Then they realized they were basically living in a toxic lead dumping ground. Quote, "This is unacceptable," Niedermeyer said early Thursday of the potential for contamination of well water for thousands of residents in and around the town of Lowell. So let me just be clear so you understand what's happening here. They're moving the lead contaminated housing. Once they demolish it, they're packing it in trucks and they're bringing it to a waste management landfill in Lowell, Indiana. And who owns that waste management landfill? Who is the largest shareholder of Republic Services? Republic Services is the name. It's the number 2 largest waste management company in the United States. Who owns it? Who is the largest shareholder? One Bill Gates. Bill Gates. And we're going to get to what Republic Services is doing all over the country because it's not just Indiana. So they're moving contaminated lead that had levels way above the allowable limit. You're talking 212 times above the allowable limit for ground soil, for lead in ground soil. So they're taking it from the West Calumet complex and they're moving it to Lowell, Indiana, to Republic Services Waste Management Landfill. Well, what's dangerous about that, you might ask? Let's go for more. Americo Engineering began earlier this month demolishing residences within East Chicago's former West Calumet housing complex as part of a cleanup of the USS Lead Superfund site. The East Chicago Housing Authority ordered more than 1,000 East Chicago residents to leave the complex in 2016 after dangerously high levels of lead and arsenic contamination in the soil were revealed. Strong said he received a complaint Tuesday from a member of the public who followed waste hauling trucks from East Chicago to the 176-acre Republic Services landfill west of this South County town. Neil Meyer said he spoke with John Blosky, principal for general contractor Americo Engineering, and the Indiana Department of Environmental Management to confirm the report that the landfill would be receiving building material from East Chicago. So I want to... Earlier today, I spoke with his name is, let me get it for you real quick. Yes, so I spoke with Sam Henderson. He's an attorney for Hoosier Environmental Council. And Sam Henderson and Hoosier Environmental Council is fighting so that this lead-contaminated dumping ground with like deathly levels of lead, which were found also in the homes. So they're demolishing these homes. They got lead all over the place, not just lead, but arsenic. And then they're moving it to a landfill, which very importantly, it doesn't have a seal so that if there's a leak at a landfill, it could seep into the groundwater. So let me play you some of the interview I had with Mr. Henderson. Here's an image of him basically giving a presentation showing the East Chicago community and where the highest levels of lead were. So that's Sam, and let me play you part of my interview with him from earlier.
Well, what's going on there? They've cleared sort of the first street of West Calumet. They've demolished the superstructure, the above ground structures, and under their waste management plan, which we and other groups objected to, but it was not changed. Under their waste management plan, any materials that are above ground are presumed to be uncontaminated. And so, as far as the contractors are concerned, they can take that to any facility that's licensed to receive destruction and demolition waste. And so they're taking it to the nearest facility, which is here in Lowell and is run by Republic Services. And that's the Lake County C&D site. And that site does not have a liner under it because under Indiana law, construction and demolition waste is defined as waste that is not going to threaten the groundwater. But obviously in this case, where you have, you have these homes that had, up to 33,000 parts per million of lead in the interior dust and comparably high levels of arsenic. There's obviously a legitimate concern about those materials leaching out and contaminating the groundwater in the area.
Right. So, if you were listening there, basically what he's saying is you're moving building structures, specifically homes that are being demolished, and you're moving them, and inside the homes there were very, very dangerous levels of lead and arsenic that when you're demolishing the homes, you are, the dust, lead in the dust, arsenic in the dust is basically being moved to a landfill, which the landfill itself is not sealed off. So when you're moving into this landfill, landfills tend to leak. So when you're moving into the landfill, well, it could leak. This lead and arsenic contaminated waste you're putting in there could leak into the groundwater for the people of Lowell, Indiana. So why is this important? Because this kind of shit is happening all over the country. It's not just East Chicago, Indiana. You're seeing landfills with very, very dangerous material. That dangerous material is going out into the air and contaminating groundwater. So why is this connected to Bill Gates? Okay, you got Bill Gates. He's the largest shareholder in Republic Services. Republic Services is the second largest. Why is the stream offline? Oh, the stream just went offline. Republic Services is the second largest waste management company in the country. Okay, so they're moving the lead-contaminated structures. All of this buffering. Why is it doing this? Is it buffering for you, Jen?
Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm watching it, but it's. I'll pause it.
Buffering on and off. Hold on, folks. Hold on. Trying to see what's the problem here. Okay, are we live? We're still live. All right.
I'm gonna pause my stream. Hopefully it'll open up the internet.
Yeah, pause it. Okay, so what you have here is this is being moved to a landfill owned by Bill Gates. And what other landfills does Bill Gates? He owns the landfill that they're moving the contaminated East Chicago lead to, and he also owns a landfill in the St. Louis area that has nuclear waste underneath it. That landfill with the nuclear waste, uranium specifically, is dangerously close to an underground methane fire, which I covered when I was reporting at the Young Turks. So in addition to speaking with the attorney, Sam Henderson, who is basically trying to fight this move to move East Chicago's lead and arsenic contaminated structures, like the houses in West Calumet complex, he's trying to stop them from moving the East Chicago houses to a landfill owned by Republic Services, with Bill Gates owning the largest shares. In addition to speaking with him, I spoke with a woman named Dawn Chapman earlier. Dawn Chapman, along with others, they're called the St. Louis Moms, have been fighting for Bill Gates and Republic Services to clean up their landfill in the St. Louis area with all this nuclear waste from the Manhattan Project days, when all these nuclear weapons were built. When they built those weapons, they started dumping the nuclear waste all over the country in places like St. Louis, So I spoke with Dawn a little earlier. Here's part of our conversation about East Chicago and what they're doing in East Chicago in relation to St. Louis. Risking the groundwater in both places, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know much about the East Chicago, but what I would suggest to residents that live there, and it is a Republic landfill and accountability matters, and they haven't been a very good neighbor here in St. Louis, so there's no reason to believe they'd be a good neighbor in Chicago. But my message to those residents is, guys, landfills leak, and landfills have a lot of problems, not just even current, but can in the future. And while you think, okay, it's out of sight, out of mind, you're putting it someplace and we never have to look at it again, that's not how it works, ever. And, these things get put in landfills, they get buried, and then 10 years from now you have an issue. And once an issue arises, landfills are very difficult and complicated to clean up and fix once a problem occurs. So you very much need to stay awake and stay on top of what they're putting in your local landfill.
Right. And the unique case in St. Louis is the Republic Services landfill has nuclear waste from the Manhattan Project days, and it's dangerously close, nobody really knows how close, to an underground methane fire. Scott Pruitt of the EPA has kind of, done a song and dance that they're working on remediation and cleaning it up. But could you just paint a picture? I mean, when I interviewed you, literally, like, kids have to go out to play with masks on at certain points. You've had all sorts of cancers and other illnesses. How are things there now?
We do have a proposal on the table from Scott Pruitt to remove some of the waste. We will not know exactly how much is going to be removed, probably till the end of the summer when an actual decision is made on our site. But, when you're looking at somebody like Republic Services, this is $1 billion corporation. And yes, Bill Gates makes a ton of money off the dividends from the stocks that he owns. This has wreaked havoc on this community, and it's going to continue to do so for the next decade that this fire burns. And we don't have to just worry about this fire, Jordan. There's always the possibility that another one could start in this landfill as well, because of the type of waste it accepted years and decades ago. So, the sins of the past are coming back to haunt our community. And while, I hear a lot of people say, well, landfills, blah, 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 they're complicated. That alone is reason why the owners of a landfill need to be on top of things and not do things on the cheap. Mm-hmm. And Bill Gates has made it as he wants to be a philanthropist. He's curing polio. There's a lot of mess he has to clean up in his own backyard.
And isn't it true with Gates that he sold, I think, all of his shares in Republic Services? So, like, him as an individual sold his shares, but then Cascade Investments, which is his holding company, basically swooped in and bought the shares that he as an individual had sold?
That is absolutely true, and that happened 2 weeks after we went to Washington, D.C., and basically picketed outside of his D.C. office because we had been trying for the better part of a year. By the way, that was plus years ago, we're still trying to get a hold of anybody from the Gates Foundation. Anybody sending emails, making phone calls, trying to just sit down and talk about this, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they don't know how bad it is. And it's all fallen on deaf ears. And so 2 weeks after we showed up in D.C. outside of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he divested his stocks in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but then picked them up in Cascade Investments. Mm-hmm. So we know that, obviously that gave everybody an idea. He does, or at least his investors know about what's happening at this site and are trying to remove him, at least by name,
mm-hmm. Gotcha.
from what's going on.
And the thing with landfills also, majority of them are not sealed properly. So when things leak, it could leak right into the groundwater.
Absolutely.
And that's a concern now. They're moving the East Chicago lead that was found at obscenely high levels in this one complex to another neighborhood that Republic Services owns a stake in. So I guess wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts? Because it's not just Bill Gates. I mean, Warren Buffett, who's also viewed as like the holy saint, a philanthropist, he owns a very large share in pipelines, especially the Dakota Access Pipeline.
That's right.
Would you like to see more people holding them accountable? Because frankly, the media doesn't. I mean, when you hear Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, it's slobbering, adoring coverage. Most people aren't aware that a lot of their investments are in things like this that are endangering people and their communities.
Absolutely, and I would say this, there's some very inexpensive things that can be done to landfills, because as you mentioned, yes, most of them are unlined, and there's some inexpensive things that can be done to prevent leaking, and some, groundwater monitoring well stations and whatnot, that could prevent these sites from becoming future Superfund sites that need to be taken. If these philanthropists want to invest in things like pipelines in landfills, maybe landfills, they think, well, garbage companies recycling. Yeah, that's true, but they have to accept the...
Okay. So, basically, and we're having a lot of buffering. I don't know why. Hold on one second. You seeing me on screen, Jen?
I'm not watching anyone.
Okay. For some reason, we're having a lot of issues with buffering and all sorts of issues on the YouTube. Okay. So, I'm going to keep going here. I don't know what is going on with the buffering, but I'm going to keep going. Basically, and I'm going to post that whole interview up later since the YouTube stream was buffering for quite a bit. But basically, what you have is Bill Gates owns his largest shareholder in this waste site. And you have this waste site not only refuses to clean up a nuclear waste site in the St. Louis area that has given people all sorts of cancers, has given people all sorts of autoimmune issues, where children have to go outside with masks on because Bill Gates refuses to spend the money to clean up the nuclear waste site. Oh, here's the buffering again. Now it says offline.
Now it's live.
I'm going to end it.